So a strategy to deal with this problem is to narrow the sample, so we can believe that these are pretty much same people, and then somehow there's a difference in terms of outcome. And then we can say that, oh, this is because of the treatment. So it's all about the better identification of causal relations. Any questions? Yeah.
I think that this has been asked before, and I still don't quite understand it. What do we call that value that we just calculated?
This one?
Yeah. Is it just like the naive estimator of
the causal effect of T on Y? Yeah. So in this case, the naive estimator would be equal to the causal effect of T on Y if you believe that they are exactly the same people, and then there is no sorting requirement. I'm just going to cover that, but yeah. As I mentioned earlier, it's a research design, so it can be combined with different models, such as multi-level models and other different models we learned during the course. And then we are actually seeing two different approaches to the better identification of causal relations. The first approach is to a modeling-based approach, and the second one is research design approach. So based on like this clever idea about like research design and stuff like that, you are trying to identify like a more clear picture of the relationship between variables. The most typical like approach would be narrow the sample so it can show the clear picture of what's going on between relations among variables, basically. The second approach is the modeling approach, which we learned the path model. Also, of course, they should be combined in research, but there are two flavors of RDD. The first one is sharp IDD. So in this example, sharp IDD would be if you have a GPA more than 3.7, you would automatically be in the genius class. But if you are not, if you don't have the GPA that is more than 3.7, you are not eligible for being genius. That's sharp RDD, basically. So the level of X dictates whether you're true. But in fuzzy RDD, which we didn't cover in the lecture, it affects the probability of treatment, which is not necessarily 1. So if you have higher GPA in the first grade, and then somehow the teachers are encouraging the students more to be in the genius class, so they are more likely to be in the genius class. Okay. Just a side note, a fuzzy RDD basically like RID, but we didn't cover it though, so you don't have to know what's going on with that. So to recap the key institution, if the only explanatory variable that suddenly changes at the threshold is treatment, then any sudden change in the outcome at the threshold must be due to the sudden change in the treatment status. So we're trying to compare apples and apples. And then if there's vast difference in terms of x, then we are saying that, oh, we're comparing apples and oranges. So the comparison is not make sense. 4 or 5. But if we narrow the sample enough to believe that these people are basically the same people, and that the threshold of being treated is very arbitrary, then you are saying that, oh, we're comparing apples and apples. Does that make sense? Any questions? Good. Okay, there are 2 conditions for RDD. The first condition would be smooth trend. So in this case, it's very like the observations are behaving very well, but somehow the trend looks like that, then you cannot really believe that there's actual trends, there's actual treatment effect going on here, right? It could be, right? So what I mean is that if the trend looks like that, this difference should not be trusted very easily. Yeah.
Is there a specific test that you
Um,
need to do on each side, or is it just you can't see something here and then it comes in? That's kind of what it says in the lecture, but like, should there be? That seems
right. Yeah. But if you run the data and stuff, there are some clear signs that your data are not behaving enough anyways. So yeah, so there is no formal test, unfortunately, but you can take the graph and take a look at the graph, argue for it. Yeah. Any questions about the smooth? Okay, good. The second approach, second condition for RDD is exchangeability. It means that observations in some small neighborhood above and below the threshold must be exchangeable. So it means that it's basically what I said earlier. You have to compare apples and apples. That means that you are balanced in covariance. So there are not unobserved heterogeneities that that makes the comparison biased.
Just for full clarity, so it's right to say that we can't covariate balance because covariate by definition you.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah. So by theory, you have to like argue for it basically. So if you have this a small narrow window of observations, then basically these covariates will be very different. Okay. Any more questions? No. Okay. Yeah, and then more about exchangeability. The Dunning article is basically gives you a clear condition for that. There should be no sorting around the threshold. The 4 questions about sorting, these are basically whether agents know what the running variable is, and whether agents know the threshold of the running variable, whether agents have incentive to sort, and whether agents have the ability to sort. By sorting, I mean okay. We're looking at women's perceived discrimination in the workplace. And then the X variable is number of employees. And the treatment is more gender bias treatment. So we're looking at the women's perceived discrimination in the workplace, and then somehow there's a law that there's a law that was passed that if you have more than 500 employees, then you are required to have more gender bias treatment. That's the situation that's going on. And then we're looking at this narrow window. And then we are seeing this result. Right? So, can you say that this much is really the causal effect of P on Y? That's the question, right? So, if the companies know what's going on and then what kind of rules will be enacted, then what would the companies do?
They have the incentive to have less employees, they don't have the training.
Right. They could at least temporarily fire some people or something. Right? So they can be 499. So these kind of companies that are willing to decrease the number of employees because of the fact that they should do more gender bias training would be less gender, right? More gender hostile. So that, yeah.
Just in the interest of like thinking this kind of an example through, couldn't we also envision a situation where a company that is under the threshold that has say 490 employees would voluntarily take up this gender bias training, knowing that it was coming in the future and they wanted to be a leader on it or something?
Sure, that can be. It's the exact like reverse situation what I was talking about. Yeah, sure. Okay. Does that make sense? Yeah. So So in this case, we cannot believe that these companies are perfectly balanced in covariance anymore. So that's why we cannot be sure that this is the causal effect of T on Y. Good. Any questions? Good. Sorry. The limitation of RDD would be actually there's another one. The first one would be the conflicting relationship between bias and standard error. So the design of RDD restricts a sample in a very localized area. So that means that the sample size would decrease, right? And then that would make the standard error usually go up. So we are decreasing bias, right? But instead of that, in exchange of standard error. So we're sacrificing standard error for decreasing bias. Good. And the second limitation of RDD would be only average, local average treatment effect can be obtained, which means that the effect of treatment on Y would be only applicable right here in this narrow window. And then for other areas, cannot sure the treatment effect would be same. Good. Any questions? Yeah, and let's do the state of practice. Go to the course website and that exercise, page 13, and download all of the files and open RDD practice 2 and change the directory. And let me know if it should do that. Make sure to change the directory before you do. Okay, all good. Good. Can you guys see that? Or good. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is to sort of sharp RDD version of Angerst and Levy article, which is basically I find it hard to pronounce, but Maimonides rule. I don't know how to
Maimonides.
Maimonides. Okay, good. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So the basic setting is a 12th century rabbinic scholar ruled that the class size should be always limited to 40 students. So if the incoming course size exceeds 40, then this class should be split to 2 classes. And the educational ministry in Israel adopted this rule, and then that gives a good experimental setting, because there is arbitrary difference between the core of 40 and then the core of 41, and then this is a good setting that the class size, because if you have the core size of 41, they would be split into 2 classes. That would increase the number of students in the class, in each class. And that could be a good example of to look at how the class size actually affects the outcome or exam scores. One thing to note that is that unit of analysis here is a classroom, not individual. So all of the outcome is the average grade score in the classroom, and then how many students are there, and stuff like that. So if we look at the variables, and read variable is the verbal score, which is the class average, and size is size of September enrollment cohort, and then the third variable is the Maimonides rule. According to that rule, how many people should be in the class? And observed variable is the actual class size. So yeah. Okay. And then this is the summary table of the variables. And then this is the table of each table for the distribution of size of September enrollment cohort, and then the characteristics of different variables that are the variable. So, for example, if the size of the September enrollment cohort is 36, then there are 9 classes that experience that cohort. And then the mean that is supposed to be the mean of how many students that are supposed to be in the class is 36, right? But apparently, there is some difference in terms of the actual observed number of students in the class. And then this is the mean score of read for these classes. So, so for the classes who had the size of September enrollment cohort of 36, has the mean score of 67. You see the size of enrollment cohort and the intended variable are same up until 41. Right? Since 41, they are supposed to be split. Good. There are some observed differences. I mean, there are differences between the intended class size and the observed class size, but you can see that still the observed class size is larger for those who had the enrollment cohort size of less than or equal to 40. And then they are much smaller in terms of observed class sizes. Yeah.
So did we set the quote unquote neighborhood to be 36 and 6? Or
You can set up the different neighborhoods depending on your choice.
okay, but in this example, that's what we did with 236.
I'll differentiate like how differentiate the size of or how narrow the window is and see what. Yeah, so the basic the window is 36. And then to run to really look at the treatment effect, we made a variable, a dummy variable named small. So the class size is less than or equal to 40, then the small is actually it's supposed to be 1, but right. Okay. So if the that is correct. Sorry. So the core size is less than 40, then they would have bigger class size, right? That's why the value of small variable is 0. And then if the core size is more than 40, then you would have smaller class size because they are split. So the small variable would be good. And then we run the Wallace regression with a very large window. And you can see that the coefficient is 2.59 or so. And then Wallace regression with RDD would be like decreasing the size of window from 38 to 40. And now there is a difference, right? So the coefficient is now different. It used to be 2.59, but now it's 4.56. So it kind of shows you that it is most likely that there are some differences in terms of covariance. If the core size is say 36, and the core sizes are 46 basically. So the fertility rate could be different in that year, and then that could explain some differences in terms of the outcome. So that's one way you can handle one way that you can use artificial design. Then if you specify the window just to size 40 and size 41, then the coefficient changes again. Okay. But notice that the standard error used to be 2.15 something, but it's now 3.28. That the variable is not significant anymore at the significance level of 5%. So you are basically, so there is a trade-off relationship between bias and standard. Any questions? Nope. Yeah, that was regression discontinued design, and actually, I'll give you 5 minutes break before starting deviation analysis and resume after that.
Even if I just updated my Excel sheet. I just updated my grade Excel sheet. Even if I get 70 on the final, I get an 88 in the class. So,
Oh.
I get your
Oh.
I don't know, do we? I'm pretty sure I remember people talk, like, people on our family talking about how Daniel has gotten a PC.
I could just feel like maybe 30% or whatever.
Yeah.
That would really
Yeah.
like a ton.
Well, let me see how low I could go.
Like I'm already there.
Let me know how low, because a B, the cutoff for B is where? Whereas 80 of BC? Does it say in the syllabus? Because I think professors have different ways of doing it. Because like you stop at whole brain thing, it was like, I don't know like what if it says in the syllabus.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Grading. Okay, so his syllabus doesn't specify anything about grades, so I'm gonna assume he's gonna use the like university official grade.
Okay.
UW.
I've never run a big picture with forensics or anything.
The first year could be last year.
Hello. This is nice. It's supposed to be nice this weekend. I think my roommate's fine. Yeah, I really enjoy my church, so maybe I have What? There's
Yeah.
my stress is showing up in my online shopping, and my mom's like, "So I saw you ordered 3 pairs of sandals," and I was like, "Yes." And there's no question here. It's a little bit of a call out. Mom. It's fine.
Feel a little bit attacked.
I feel a little attacked right now.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's the next one.
It's just 2 days ago.
Then you go on the train. But it's like, and they're arriving today, and I'm so excited. Are you doing anything fun this weekend?
Probably not.
Playing. Something fun. At least one day. You can work one day.
Oh yeah, that that was the radicals. Like,
Oh,
yeah, well, like
cool. That'll be fun for you. I bet they're like goals.
they are. They're so good. One of my coach,
Oh, really?
and for the first time, they have. She also just
Just she plays with the men.
Yeah.
And that works out.
yeah, it's like a new thing.
Everything I know about
It's like
trade
sports, like
and Zoom or something.
I was gonna say.
You're like a bag or something. You get up and walk around.
There's like- I was just thinking about that. I was like, I wonder how that works like together. Like I know a lot of sports teams play like this, but
choose.
I wouldn't be surprised what the female would be higher.
One person, yeah.
But like just having like both of them. They might have been-
Yeah, it's something like.
Is it? It's not a fun
Strategy.
sport.
Not really, but.
A little bit. Oh, it's mixed.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's really fun. I play it for It's like the whole like.
Yeah, so. Well, I see you have busy contacts. I can
Yeah.
see. Oh, that's so interesting. That's cool. There's height differences. And
Yeah.
now that feels unfair and.
Actually, the like class we did more stressful last year. Reading's fun.
Cool.
And what, obviously very effective, but a lot of them say that like they appreciate the challenge because they and stuff. So,
Oh, yeah.
and they take offense from that.
It's a very good idea.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine that. Yeah, that does make sense. It's just weird because like not a lot of sports are in business, so then you feel it. So it's like it's a very weird transition where you're like, like that's cool, but like weird also to react to that.
But
Sometimes the guys are dicks.
Oh, I bet. Oh, I bet. I can. I like that hat. I think they're so cool. Somebody did the hat off and choose that. That's like so much fun.
Okay, let's start again.
Were you excited about the first game?
So yeah, we're starting with the mediation analysis. But yeah, so I'm sure you guys remember total causal effects and direct effects, and right?
Yesterday.
Yeah. So so far in the past models and stuff, we try to identify the total causal effects, right? But for now, we're trying to identify the direct effects and indirect effects as well. The focus is to identify the direct effect, not total causal effects. So so the key motivation is that let's think of this situation. Is the total causal effect identified in this case?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because that path is blocked anyways. Because this is a collider, and then this is not controlled anyways. So the total causal effects are identified. Right? But to identify this path, what would you do? To control for the mediator. Right? But the problem is there should be a spurious relationship between T and U. So that leads to the failure to identify the directive of T on Y. That is our question. That is our problem. So even when the total causal effects can be identified, the direct effects cannot be identified sometimes. So the key concepts, we're trying to deal with the situation with coming up with different key concepts basically. And the first concept is CDE, or controlled direct effects. It is called controlled direct effects because it's the effect of T on Y when we intervene to set M to some fixed value. That's the same for everyone. You are still controlling for M to identify T. But how you control for M is basically you are setting the level of, or the value of M to a fixed value that's the same for everybody. Okay. Good. And the natural direct effect. Any questions so far? No? The natural direct effect is you still control for M, right? But you are letting so you're letting the value of M to be M when this person is treated or not treated. Okay. So the value of M would be different for everybody, different across people, basically. Good. So we cannot observe the potential outcome of M, right? Because not a person cannot be treated and not be treated at the same time, right? But let's basically say that let's basically think of a situation that you can observe the potential outcome, okay? And then basically what it does is that you are controlling for this path or blocking this path, controlling for M or blocking this path by subtracting the predicted M depending on T from T. So there are some variances, right? Variances that that are explained. The variances of M that are explained by T, right? And then you are subtracting these variances from T. And then see what happens with the product relationship. CDE is just setting, pretend as if you observe M for everybody, and then intervene M for everybody, and then set M to a certain value. And then see what happens with the P and Y. Does that make sense? It's a little bit tricky, but questions?
So anything that doesn't set M at the natural level is CD, or how we come up with the probabilities. Okay. So CD is anytime we set M at any number that's not the natural number that he would have had, or sorry, the observation would have had, no matter how we come up with it, or
Yeah. So
anything.
it could be anything, really. You could M could be 1, 2, 3, 4. You can just set your as a researcher, you can set the value as you like. But when in the natural direct effect approach, the M, you are still intervening M, but through T. So in the natural direct approach, the value of M would be the value of M when this person is treated or not. What this person would naturally have when this person is treated or not. So it can be different for everybody, right? But controlled direct effects is about setting the value of M to that is the same for everybody, and that's what happens with the correct relationship between T and Y. And then we covered key notations. Oops. The I, which is treatment variable, MI, which is M, saying that. And we covered MTI, which is potential outcome of M when T is set to the YI is the observed outcome, and then YTI would be potential outcome of Y when t is set to the small t. Good. Any questions so far? Nope. TMI would be the potential outcome of y when t is set to t and m is set to m. TMI. And TI is the notice the difference between the two. Okay. So m is a number, right? So you are setting the value of setting the value of m basically to a number right here. But in this case, m p asterisk I means that so this is the potential outcome of y when t is small t, and the value of m when the treatment is t asterisk. Which is not necessarily the same as t right here. Okay. So you can think of t becoming 0, and then m, the value of m could be set as m when t asterisk is 1. Okay. Yeah.
Is t asterisk, could that be like when you're doing the conditional and you just make it a random number, or is that also in the absence of the treatment? Which one is that referring to, the natural effect versus the?
Natural effect.
That's
So-
the natural effect.
Right. So yeah. But yeah, I'll explain the natural direct effect in more detail with the notations and stuff. But I'm just pointing out that they can be different.
I have a quick question. In the asterisk one, so that's just like you would have to then specify whether or not it's for treatment or for not treatment.
Mhm.
Okay. So it could be for either. It's just
Right.
for when treatment is set at a certain. Okay.
Yeah. So with these key notations are looking at average CE, which is so the average CE is basically when you are changing the treatment from T asterisk to T. Good. And the CD would be the average of potential outcome of TM, which means that the potential outcome of y when t is set to the smaller t and m is set to smaller m. You are specifying t and m into certain numbers, and then compare the potential outcome of y when t is set to t asterisk and m is set to n. Good.
So M is the same for both.
Right. Yeah. M is set to a specific number. I will explain it in more detail, but you are basically saying that this could be 0.2 when n is 1. And this could be 0.4 when n is 2. The CD, so the CDE in this case would be 0.2 when m is CDE. One would be 0.2, right? You are switching from 0 to 1 in terms of the treatment, which means that you are treating this person. And when m is 1, then the effect is 0.2. Does that make sense? But when you are saying that CDE, you are switching the treatment from 0 to 1 and m is 2, then you are in the 0.4. When could it be happening? When there is an interaction between T and M. Right? So the interaction between T and M means that the effect of T on Y can vary depending on the level of N, right? Does that make sense? That's what the interaction is about.
So if there were no interaction, it
Then-
would still just be like 0.2 regardless of
Yeah.
the level of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Average NDE. Looks like that. Which means that the NDE is the potential outcome of Y when T is set to T and M is set to the potential outcome of M when the treatment is T asterisk, not T. But this is very counterfactual, right? Any? You still need to control for n, right? But on what level? That is the question, right? That is the difference between CDE and NDE, right? What NDE does is to set or set the level of M to the potential outcome of M when the treatment is T asterisk, or let's say 0. Good. Questions? No. I'm a little bit of ahead of myself, so don't worry about it if you don't understand it at this point. But controlling for n by subtracting the predicted value of m that is predicted by t from t means that t actually causes n, right? And then this is where I actually this causal relationship is identified, right? This is based on the assumption that there is the causal effect of t and n is identified. To subtract the variance that is explained by m, or the variance of m explained by from t. That is how regression controls for variables, right? You remember that. But then again, this assumes the causal relationship between theta. What if there is here confounding, right? Confounding here. That could hinder the identification of the direct relationship. So that's why we are setting the potential, setting m at the level of n equals m parentheses t asterisk. Okay. So they can have exactly the same potential outcome. Not exactly the same across individuals, but this potential outcome is the outcome caused by t. That's what I meant. Good. In fact, subtract the value of m from t, but the predicted m from t, without considering the potential outcomes and stuff like that, there could be some unobserved heterogeneities that affect the predicted value of m that is predicted by t. That could bias the relationship between t and y. Good. Yeah.
I have a question. I'm not sure I understand. Was this to try and say that and the NDE approach is a way of like avoiding problems of confounding? Or I
Um,
didn't get the point.
No, so not avoiding, but it's more like dealing with
Okay.
the problem of confounding, really. But so as I mentioned earlier, if there is confounding between the M and Y, the total causal effects is identified, right?
Right.
But the direct effect by controlling M could be biased, right? So what it does is to so what NDE does is to how we can basically just deal with this spurious relationship.
Okay. So before you, just before this though, you drew the confounder between T and M. How does that change it, or does it not?
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one is also important. Yeah. Yeah, I'll explain that in the comparison between C and NDE, but for NDE, it is also important. Okay. The implication of the difference is that CDE and NDE are same only when there's no interaction between the treatment, causal, including non-linear interactions. And linear models obscure the difference between CDE and NDE. So let's move on to indirect effects. So there is no controlled indirect effects because you have fixed the value of M in the first place in the controlled indirect effects. Right? So okay. You control for M by fixing the value of M that is same for everybody. So there's no variation whatsoever right here. So you cannot identify the indirect effects, or there's no controlled indirect effects. Right? But in natural indirect effects, the effect of changing T on Y that operates only through the changes that. So so that means that you are identifying the causal effect between T and M, and then if you know the causal effect of M and Y, you can identify the natural indirect effects. By the way, natural indirect effects is noted as or sorry. is that um, so the natural indirect effect is that you are saying that t is t asterisk or t is 0. So you are saying that there is no difference in the level of t. Right? No level, right? No. But so there's no variation in t, observed t whatsoever. So you are blocking this path, right? But you are looking at the potential of outcome of t, outcome of y, when the level of m is m t versus m t asterisk. So you are comparing what would have happened for m when this person is treated versus when this person is not treated in the level. But you're still fixing t to t asterisk, but you are looking at two different potential outcomes. And that's how you can identify indirect effects, natural indirect effects. Good. It's kind of confusing, right? But yeah, it can be a little confusing. So yeah. So we're moving on to the actual identification problem. Okay. So we're trying to identify the direct effect. Right? But the problem is that to identify the direct effect, you are controlling for m, then that would make a spurious relationship between t and c string, right? So there is, as long as there are confounders between m and y, you would have spurious relationship in identifying or bias in identifying the direct effect. Good. So so yeah. So to identify the CVE and VE, we are looking at 4 different assumptions. Okay. The first one is Z. I'll just explain it first. So the first condition is that there's no like other unobserved variable that actually mediates the relationship between y and t and y. We are assuming that. there are no U's that mediate TMI. That's the first assumption. And the second assumption is Z and M block all backward paths between T and Y. That means that so if there are confounders T and Y between T and Y, they should be controlled, which is pretty much we're familiar with. Well, so if there are confounders between T and Y, they should be controlled, right? That's what it's talking about. The second assumption is pretty straightforward, right? And Z and T block all backdoor paths between M and Y. So there can be no spurious relationship that might affect Y. You should control for Z3. Because to identify direct effect and you control for M, then there should be a spurious relationship, right? So there can be spurious relationship, but to block this path, you are controlling for Z3. Good. Questions? Okay. That way you can identify natural directive. And understandably, NIE would be also identified in this case. No, sorry, CD, sorry. CDE would be identified. Because CDE in CDE, M is set to be a certain number anyways. So this path is blocked. But so controlling for Z1 and Z3 as well as M suffices for identifying CD. But for ND and NIE, things are a little more complicated. So in ND and NIE, you are not arbitrarily like setting the level of N, right? You are just looking at the potential outcomes and then subtracting the predicted value from P, right? But this is based on the assumption that this path is identified, right? But what if there is a confounder between T and M? This is not correctly identified, right? When you run the regression, it wouldn't be correctly identified, right? Good. So that's why you want to control for Z2 as well. So it is noted, it is in writing in Z blocks, although all backward paths between T and M. Okay. So for these two, Z1, Z2, Z3, as well as M should be controlled to identify ND and N. Good. So that's why Felix said there's one more condition or assumption identifies any for it. Okay. So the summary is that for total effect, as long as there's no confounders between T and Y, you're good to go. For CDE, no confounders between T and Y and M and Y, you're good to go. And for NDE and IE, you should have the one more assumption that there is no confounders between T and M. Or unobserved confounder. Let's move on to estimation part. So the first condition is linear mediation without linear interactions. So you are saying that expected value of M is beta 0 plus beta 1p, and vector or matrix form of beta coefficients, and C is the matrix form of all Z variables, basically. To align the equation with this situation, let's write that beta 2, Z1, and beta 3, Z2, and beta 4. No, not beta 4. I'm sorry. Oh. Beta 2 is 2. So this is beta 1. And beta 2 is this one. And beta 3 is this one. Okay. Good. And then Y is beta 0 plus beta 1 P, or sorry, beta 1 M. Oops. Beta 1 T plus beta 2 M. And then beta 4, the Z1. And beta 5 for Z3. So now it's beta 1, beta 2. Does it make sense? Am I making sense here? Okay. So you are not thinking about the interaction between P and muscular in this case. Okay. That part. What do you think? The CDE would be if you plug in the definition of CDE, this is the definition is basically the potential outcome of Y when P is T and M is M minus the expected value of y, the potential outcome of y when t is t asterisk and n is m, smaller again. So when t is t, t is the smaller t, it would be theta 0 plus theta 1 t plus theta 2 smaller m and theta 4 z1, whatever that is. That's expected value of ytm. Right? Good. If you plug in the numbers of t and m in the place of these values, like these variables, you would have this number, right? But and then the expected value of y t asterisk m would be asterisk so if you calculate this number, then you would have theta 1 t asterisk minus t. When the treatment is the binary variable, then and then oh shoot. When the treatment is a binary variable, and then you are moving on from 0 to 1, then CDE would be theta 1. Good. And NDE would be sorry. And then if you plug in the numbers, then you would have this number as well. So it means that there is no interaction between T and M, the CDE and NDE would be the same. And then you can do the same thing for NDE, NIE, and then total effects as well. The total effects would be NDE plus. So now, let's think of a situation where there's an interaction between T and M. Still same, but theta 1, like theta 0, theta 1, theta 1t, Tm, theta 3, Tm, theta 4, Z1, and theta 5, Z3. So now, the path right here is theta 1 plus theta 3m. because these two parts can be rewritten as okay. So the path coefficients between t and y, the direct relationship can vary depending on the level of m. Okay. And if you plug in the numbers in the equations, then you would have all of these effects. All of this stuff implies that when there is a linear interactions or just interactions between T and M, then the CDE and NDE wouldn't agree with each other. That's the implication in this case. Good. And let's move on to state of practice. Okay, so we're trying to analyze the how the effect of childhood neighborhood disadvantage on adolescent test scores is mediated by adolescent neighborhood disadvantage. So the data are based on the PSID, I said, but it is altered. It's slightly fake this stuff. Anyways, the outcome is academic test scores in adolescents. The treatment is disadvantaged childhood neighborhood, and the mediator is disadvantaged adolescent neighborhood, and covariates are gender, welfare status, parents' welfare status, and marital status. To run mediation analysis, you have to install the command paramed. It says C install paramed. You have to copy and paste the command. And the basic syntax structure of paramed looks like paramed variable name and a bar. A bar is the outcome variable, and m bar is the mediator variable, and a0 is the control level of treatment. A1 is the treatment level of treatment, and then m is the controlled value of mediator for getting the CD. So remember, CD is m specific. So it really varies depending on the level of M. And YREG is Y. Simply. There are, if you run this regression, the command would be REG, right? Regression, right? Just oriented. MREG is about specifying this equation. C bars means control variables, and no int means there is no, you are specifying that there is no TM. interactions whatsoever. We're not allowing for that. So in this case, the command would be paramet. Test score would be the dependent variable. And a bar is sorry, I think it's treatment. Sorry about that. A bar is treatment. So this is whether you live in the disadvantaged neighborhood as a child. And M bar is about whether you live in the disadvantaged neighborhood as an adolescent. And C bars is control variables, and A0 is 0, and A1 is 1, which means that control level of treatment is 0, and the treatment level of treatment is 1. And for CDE, you specify the level of M to 0. And Y-reg should be linear because the Y is a continuous variable. And M-reg is logistic because the M is finite. And you didn't allow any interactions between candidates. And then let's look at so this is the so this is the regression results. See, and this is the logistic regression to predict the level of M. And the last table is basically summarizes CDE, NDE, and NIE, and total effects. Notice that there is no difference between CDE and NDE in this case because you didn't allow any interactions. And NDE is the sum of NDE and And let's say you didn't specify no interaction options. The difference now is that the CDE is negative 6 point something, and NDE is negative 5.2. That means that CDE and NDE do not agree with each other when you allow for the interaction between T and N. Good. So yeah. So I'm trying to make the problem set more substantive rather than calculations and stuff like that. But I'll distribute the problem set. Let's see what happens. I'm not sure that will be seen for the final as well, but Anyways,
Sorry, did you already say when you're gonna post the problem set?
it's gonna be tonight. Yep. Yeah. But do you have any questions? Yeah, the mediation analysis can be a little bit confusing, but yeah, just let me know if you have any questions or just don't understand it at all. I'm happy to go over topics. So yeah. Anyways, see you tomorrow.